There's the Dhammapada verse, which I think deals with what I want to be talking about now. And it's number 11 and 12. Those who mistake the unessential to be essential and the essential to be unessential, dwelling in wrong, purposeful thoughts, never arrive at the essential. Those who know the essential to be essential and the unessential to be unessential, dwelling in right, purposeful thoughts, arrive at the essential. Sama sankappa.
You're right.
The right purpose or thought.
Sure.
So, knowing what you want, knowing the right, being clear on your purpose, what you really want. Say freedom from suffering.
The whole life, yeah. So it's the most fundamental context of the holy life. It's the freedom from suffering. That's as the Buddha said himself. Like the sea has only one taste of salt, so that the Dhamma has only one taste of freedom from suffering. And again, you can take that in a sort of general descriptive manner. Yes, freedom from suffering, but you can also take that in a manner of quite an acute form of correct contemplation. Like develop the theme of being free from suffering. Contemplate it. Maintain it. Maintain it in your mind. Have it endure in your mind. Don't forget about it. Don't lose perspective on it. Because if you had faith to begin with, in the Buddhist teaching, that offer you possible way out of suffering, that means you will also, if you don't lose perspective, have faith in all the other instructions he gave. The reasons for celibacy, the reasons for virtue. It won't be as hard because you have faith and you will see it pertaining to the goal because you have that perspective. That's why faith is also could also be enough for somebody to make effort. So you don't necessarily need to have it all figured out, but if you have faith in the right instruction and you do it rightly, but that doesn't mean you can sacrifice your perspective on it. So the faith can help you if the perspective hasn't been compromised, if the purpose hasn't been obscured. Why are you doing this? Why are you a monk? Or why are you practicing Dhamma? To be free from suffering. So you always keep that at the back of your mind, that purpose. And that's how you can get to differentiate more and more things that are then compatible with it and things that are not incompatible. And above all, that's how you can also become aware of your own responsibility for it. Like your own habits of craving that revolve around random things. You'll say, wait a minute, why am I doing this? Because now you have perspective. This is what's important to me, to be free from suffering. Yet here I am, like feverishly engaged with this, trying to... What's the purpose of that? And I can't seem to be able to stop. Why not? Because you lost perspective. You regain perspective, stopping, restraining becomes effortless, or certainly requires less effort.
So gaining perspective makes things a lot easier.
Yes, yeah. Gaining perspective and maintaining perspective makes things more easier. Because why? Because the purpose is not obscured, or it's regenerated. You know, like even as we mentioned it the other day, like even in the lay world of people who are not necessarily interested in practice of Buddhism, like the motivational speakers and so on talk about finding the purpose for your life. Because without it, you're going to be depressed, or you'll be just wandering aimlessly, or just scratching your sensual itch day in, day out, nothing. But finding a purpose gives you that meaning, which then makes actions much more easier to do. Duty easier to do. Restrained, enduring things much easier to do because you have a greater purpose. So you can make a practice out of maintaining, through contemplation, maintaining in the back of your mind, not actively, I want to be free from suffering, I want to be free from suffering. Just remind yourself and then let it endure without forgetting about it. Not actively thinking about it, but not forgetting about it either. That's the practice of mindfulness in the nutshell.
So you could ask yourself from time to time, maybe, what is the point? What is the point of practice?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can like reevaluate, not in a sense of reevaluate, oh, what am I doing, but even that, if necessary, sometimes But you want to be really just maintaining the direction of your practice that you already know. That's the whole point. So that's that practice of questioning we discussed before. You question yourself as a form of contemplation, not to necessarily find the right answer, but more like to induce the right attitude. They will then bring that perspective back, or clarify it, or introduce new perspectives. You won't be given the right answer, because it's not like a quiz question. It's more like discerning the things that are already there, but you need to see them with the right type of eyes. You need to recognize them. You need to recognize the nature of impermanence, the nature of non-ownership, and so on. That's all there already. But not recognizing it means it's not there for you, because it's not being seen. So if you have a question, like, it doesn't even need to be anything specific or technical. And just as we said, you remind yourself, or you ask yourself, why am I practicing? What's the purpose? I've been doing this Buddhist practice for a number of years. What's the purpose of that? Doesn't matter how far you got into that practice, how much you know, and you can always re-ask yourself that question, and if you do it rightly, you will just re-establish the perspective, or just remind yourself that that perspective is still there. Either way, it's going to result in mindfulness. So if your question is, why am I practicing? Whether you're a beginner or not a beginner, you ask yourself that, and don't jump at the answer. Don't rush, because of this. But no, just, what's the point of this? And you'll see that the answer is already there. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been doing it for all these years. The point is, as the point always was, freedom from suffering. So if you don't feel perhaps that you're free from suffering enough, then you can press the questions further. Again, not just so that you can find the right answer that will please you, but more like that through that attitude of questioning, you will start to look in the direction different from the ready-made answer that would come your way. The question that will inevitably then have to result in greater perspective eventually. It might be more ambiguous perspective, and that's why people fear to question their own beliefs, their own efforts, because by putting it in question means you're already questioning, you're already implying that it could have also been invalid. So I must not question it then. That's how I will not think about the possibility of me being wrong, for example. But if you always question yourself, that becomes your perspective. And that's how actually you cannot be affected if a thing does change. Because you haven't been emotionally invested in it, and certainly you haven't invested like a form of, invested by ignorance. Like, I ignore this, I'm not going to question this. Because simply putting it in question, that ambiguity causes me anxiety. And that's why I will not question it. But that's completely the opposite attitude of the attitude you should have if you want to be free from suffering.
Can you give an example?
Well, the example would be, why am I practicing? Because I want to be free from suffering. Am I free from suffering? So if the answer to that is no.
Yeah, you know the answer.
You know the answer. Am I fundamentally, ultimately beyond suffering? If the answer is yes, great. You already know what you're doing. But the answer is no, or I'm not sure.
Or I am suffering.
Means, okay, so all these efforts I've been making, yet I'm still not free from suffering. Perhaps I was wrong. Not like that the Buddha's teaching was wrong, but perhaps I haven't been doing it rightly. And again, you might now, because all the investment of your effort and emotionally charged practice that you've been doing for a number of years, it will make that person uncomfortable if you start questioning it like that. It's going to make you uncomfortable. What if for these 20 years of my meditation methods and techniques, and I'm not free from suffering? What if I've been doing it wrong? Could I start again? So the sooner you start that questioning, the less of an emotional investment it will become if you've been doing it wrongly. In other words, if you question it from the start, or if you start questioning it as soon as you become aware of that you should question it, it's still a good thing, because it will prevent you from proliferating further if it were the wrong way. And again, if it were not the wrong way, you would have been free from suffering by now. So then you reevaluate, but not like, oh, but what if, yeah, I might have been wrong. But again, what is my purpose? To never be wrong or to be free from suffering? To be free from suffering. So it doesn't matter even if for 100 years I've been wrong. Now I can be right then. Now I know that everything I've done is wrong, which means it's less likely that I'll repeat the same mistakes because I admitted it to myself. But if you never question it, never admit it, you will then blindly just go and keep repeating the same thing that you deep down inside know it doesn't work because it hasn't freed you from suffering after all this time. And even Ajahn Chah said himself, if you don't become a Sotapanna in the first 5 years of practice, you're not doing it right. If you don't get the right view within the first 5 years of becoming a monk, committed to, you're not doing it right. And that's quite accurate. You're not doing it right. And you should really reevaluate quickly, because the more you invest in the wrong effort, the harder it will be to undo it. Because more conceit gets involved, more sense of self, and also more of that, oh, I'm not going to look at this. Because it's becoming, the more you ignore it, the more unpleasant it will be to face it later on. So a simple question, am I free from suffering? If you know you're not free from suffering, you can, as you said, you can ask yourself, why am I suffering? But again, don't, well, I'm suffering because, and then give some stock phrase answer. No, ask yourself, why am I suffering? Without, and then restrain the answer. Don't answer it. Just let the question endure. Just remind yourself, why am I suffering? And let it endure. Because it will prevent, by allowing the question to endure, not jumping into an answer, it forces you to adopt a perspective by refraining from jumping into the answer. And that perspective, it's going to be ambiguous, it's going to be unpleasant, but it's still a perspective. And it's still better than just providing a quick answer that's going to turn a blind eye to any greater perspective.
It's
so
similar to a non-judgmental.
It is, but not judgmental for the sake of non-judgment.
Non-biased.
Because, I'm non-judgmental, well, that can become your judgment, because you started doing it mechanically. If you ask yourself, am I judgmental? And don't answer it. Certainly don't answer it right away. That's going to force you to endure with that ambiguity, am I yes or am I not? Because see, saying, am I judgmental? Saying yes means you're judgmental. Saying no means you're judgmental. Am I judgmental? No, I'm not judgmental. You just made a judgment that you are not judgmental. That's what I mean. Why am I suffering? But don't answer it in that sense, but simply look at the question of why am I suffering? Don't try to collect information about it, but why am I suffering? So when you ask yourself, why am I suffering? What are you directing the question at? Well, you're directing it at the actual suffering, or at the possibility to suffer, or at the fact that you're not free from suffering. Okay, so I'm not free from suffering, otherwise I wouldn't even ask myself, why am I suffering? So that's already a first recognition that comes simply from that right perspective that comes out of the right question. So why am I suffering then? Well, I don't know. Certainly I cannot define it, not at this stage. So why am I suffering then? Oh, I suffer because suffering is present. Would I suffer if suffering doesn't manifest? No. So I suffer when suffering is manifest. Yes. Do I have a say in that, for example? We can ask that. Do I have a say in suffering being manifest? Well, I might have say in things I do, but do I have say in the unpleasant feeling being manifested? In enduring? No, because if I had a say, it would disappear whenever I tell it to it wouldn't even appear, because I don't want it to appear. So I am liable to these feelings. In the same sense, the weather changes. And I can't even conceive stopping or preventing it. So, is then that disagreeable feeling, is that my suffering? Is the disagreeable mood that comes my way that I have no say in it, and I can't do anything about it, is that why, is that because of why, is that the reason why I suffer? And again, yes, no, don't jump there. Are my disagreeable feelings, is that what my suffering is? Let that endure. Let it endure for days, if nothing presents itself. By having perspective on such questioning that pertains to these universal natures, so to speak, you are looking in that direction, which means there is a chance of you discerning things rightly. But if you just give a stock answer or the answer you think it should be, you stop looking because you provided the answer. And even, oh yeah, this answer is perfectly right, fine. But let me keep looking. That's what we meant by self-interrogation and questioning. Or then you go and visit people who think they're wiser than you, or you know they're wiser, and let them in question, because it will bring all these possibilities of developing these perspectives through self-questioning that undoes the ignorance, undoes the lust and aversion. Yes. So why am I suffering? Why am I not free from suffering? You don't have to answer it. Just become fully aware of it, not for some sort of mystical revelation. Simply you want that perspective or that questioning, existential questioning, to endure. Because by enduring you become more familiar with it. So why am I not free from suffering? Okay, let's get some guidelines in regard to that. What did the Buddha say? Why are you not free from suffering? Because there is craving. You crave. Oh, so I'm not free from suffering because I still crave. Crave in regard to what? But craving is on the level of your doing, not on the level of some placement.
Yeah.
That you can say, where is the feeling, in a way, because you haven't created it. You're liable to it.
So what is the craving?
What is the craving? Yeah. You don't have to overthink, how should I ask this question? The point is, questioning the subject, questioning the phenomena will at least start inducing some perspective on it. Yes, so where is the craving? Okay, where is the craving? Well, craving is in regard to the feeling. That's what Buddha said. Okay, but now I need to understand that. I can't just give the answer that I read in the suttas. So what is the feeling then? As we just discussed, feeling is that I'm liable to. Feeling is that I have no say in. So there are these phenomena, one at a time, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. They come my way, and I have no say in that. I have absolutely no say in that. I cannot prevent them from arising. I cannot tell them to stay longer or to disappear quicker. I am fully liable to it. So, I cannot influence that. But what is it that I can influence on the basis of those phenomena of feeling? It's your own attitude towards feelings. Your own feelings. Not towards the world that caused these feelings. It's over the feelings that you feel right there and then. Whatever present feeling is, it's your attitude in regard to it. That's where craving is. So if you stop resisting the feeling, if you stop indulging the feeling, if you stop ignoring the feeling, you will not be able to crave for the feeling. If you're not able to crave for the feeling, how can you suffer on account of feeling? Hence, craving leads to suffering, absence of craving leads to freedom from suffering. I'm giving answers now.
Sure.
That came out of questioning the right things. Of course. So that's what I mean, like you can't just start questioning things rightly without any knowledge. You need to read the suttas so you know what to question.
Just think, so if you ask yourself a question about the craving, which gives you, so makes you look at that. What is that?
Yeah.
So you see craving.
Not in the same sense as you can see, like, oh, I'm feeling pleasant, I'm feeling unpleasant. Oh yeah, there is craving right in front of me. Because that would make it an independent phenomenon, in phenomena that's independent of your attitude. But it isn't. That's why craving or assumptions are negative phenomena in a sense. You can see that in regard to which your attitude is being sort of exercised. And then you realize my attitude is wrong. So undoing the attitude undoes the craving. So that's why the Buddha said the upadana, like the assumption, it's not the five aggregates. But there is no assumption without the five aggregates. You can say the same for craving. Craving is not in regard to the feeling, but there is no craving apart from feeling. It's the desire and lust in regard to feeling that craving is there. It's desire and lust in regard to the five aggregates that upadana is there. You remove desire and lust, there is no basis for upadana to be manifested, or there is no basis for craving to be manifested. That's what I mean. If you give the positive answer to what craving is, you think that's what craving is, which means you're not looking now on the level of your attitude. So that's am I suffering? Yes. Am I free from suffering? No. What is the cause of suffering? Craving. Okay. Now I gave that answer, but now I need to understand that answer. So you can ask yourself, what is my craving? Well, I don't know. But I know that whenever suffering is, craving is. That's what the Buddha said. So if I don't suffer, if I'm free from suffering, there is no craving. But the fact I'm not free from suffering, so whenever there is suffering present in my experience, craving must be there also to the same extent. So suffering and craving are inseparable. So that's a conclusion you arrived by not jumping onto the immediate answer.
So I ask, am I suffering? And then I'm not. It makes me look at that phenomenon which I'm talking about.
Yeah. So why am I suffering? And now you have all these suttas you read about suffering coming up to your mind. That's fine. Don't ignore it, but don't just, yes, I'm suffering because of this. That answer doesn't apply to you. So I'm suffering because of craving. Okay, but why am I suffering? Oh, so now you can provide even more accurate answer. Why am I suffering? Well, suffering is because of craving. So why am I suffering? Because I haven't understood craving. So the answer that the Buddha gave, that is correct answer. I haven't understood, which is why I'm suffering. So that would be more accurate answer to that question that you arrived at by not jumping at the first offer answered by your mind. Why am I suffering? Because of craving is present and sankharas. Okay, suffering is because of sankharas and because of craving. Why am I suffering? Because I haven't understood sankharas nor the craving. That's why I am suffering. That's why I am liable to suffering. So if you want to understand it, you start questioning that. What is craving? As you said, or where is craving? Or why do I crave? Any question that will revolve around the phenomenon of craving at least implies that, designates that direction. So you don't try to, see, he said this, that answer pleases me, that's why I'm suffering. No, that answer pleases me, maybe for right, maybe for wrong reasons, but that's not why I suffer. I suffer because I haven't understood that answer. So that's why it takes effort to develop the skill of contemplating things rightly. You can't just, why is this happening to me? And expect some wisdom to come out of it. Although, it's a necessary step. If a person doesn't start questioning their own existence, why am I suffering? They'll never look for the way out. Because there are people who will never ask that question to themselves. And they'll never ever make any effort towards practice or anything remotely to free themselves from suffering. Yeah, you can also use that as what we spoke the other day about the theme, liability to suffering. You can establish it on peripheral in your mind. Don't think about it. I'm suffering. I might just have it there as a background of whatever you go through in your day-to-day life. Suffering might befall me. And again, anybody can do that. You don't need great instruction for it. You just need to be, brave in a way. You need to have courage to admit it to yourself that yes, because it's the truth. It's not that you are fabricating it when you think about it, which is what usually people who develop attitude as a form of self kind of defense mechanism. If I think about it, that's how I stop thinking about it and that's how I'm happy. That's how I don't suffer, until you suffer. But then it's too late to do anything about it. Also, you must not think about suffering, because it's neurotic. Well, whether it's neurotic or not, it's beside the point. The point is that it's the truth. You are liable to suffering at any given moment in your life, in your existence. So if you have that strength to admit that to yourself, gradually, it becomes the theme. And that's the theme that the Buddha said, it's the necessary theme for somebody to seek the homeless life and practice towards Nibbana. So a young man realizes he's prey to suffering.
He's liable to suffering.
Exactly. Imagine, we spoke about it before probably, but it doesn't hurt to repeat it. Many people would read over that line, he's prey to suffering. Yes, but no, make a theme out of it. Ponder, understand it. How would you feel if you were a prey? If there is a non-specific, non-defined, ubiquitous sort of presence of a hunter, but you can't see it, but you know it's hunting you. You would feel like constantly something can pounce on you, but you can never see from what direction. So it's quite a profound existential sort of anxiety and state And the Buddha said that is the necessary step. When he recognized, I am prey to suffering, why don't I go and do something about this? So he didn't fabricate it, he basically discerned that theme because that theme was the right theme. Because you are truly prey to suffering. And how would you feel if, like, you go on throughout the day and people tell you, oh wait, like there is an assassin stalking you. You don't know when he's gonna hit you, where, nor how, but you know it will. You would be on a constant alert. Involuntarily. Like, it wouldn't be, you don't need to make the effort. You're gonna have to make the effort to distract yourself from it. From the pressing truth. And that's why it's hard for people to practice restraint and give up habits and lay life, because that's part of that self-defense mechanism from admitting the most fundamental basic truth. Then you are not your own self, in the sense of you are not in control of your own existence, which means you are liable to misfortune, to accidents, you are prey to suffering. Not to this person or to that, to the government, no, you are prey to the unpleasant feeling arising within yourself. Suffering is hunting you down. And you dwell on that theme, and you're only going to have one result. Seeking out liberation from suffering. Because that's the whole life is about defense mechanism from that. So why don't you then make the effort? No. What if you were to make the effort and uproot it? Means no other effort is required. No other maintenance, no other shelter, no other defense mechanism. Nothing's required. That's true freedom. No pressure, no burden. I must do this, I must do that. If I don't fix this, suffering will come. If I don't do that, well, then it will be unpleasant. No, there's nothing for you to do, because there's nothing for you that can make you suffer. And again, it can become mindless, conceptualized as theme. Yes, I'm suffering. But that's when you lost your mindfulness. But if you remind yourself that I shouldn't be giving this answer, I should be discerning these answers on the basis of the present situation. Because present situation shows me the nature that I am still liable to suffering. Which means the theme is there. The theme of suffering and freedom from it is already there. Whether you answer it or not is secondary. So you can walk around feeling like you're prey to suffering. Doesn't matter how careful you are, but obviously it's going to make you more careful. But you realize that no amount of your action can prevent you from experiencing the unpleasant feeling if it chooses to come. So by admitting this to yourself, then you get to recognize that your defense from unpleasant feeling is not about preventing it to come. Your defense from the unpleasant feeling is about preventing yourself from resisting it, from implying that you can do something about it. And that's how you prevent yourself from craving. And then you also realize, okay, so if I want to do that, I equally then cannot be careless in regard to pleasant feeling. Because pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, it's the feeling. It's that thing I'm trying to free myself from. I can't just free myself from unpleasant feelings and only maintain pleasant feelings. So I'll cherry pick the ones I want. No. Feeling is the problem because I'm liable to it. By accepting the liability to pleasant feeling means I make myself equally liable to the unpleasant feeling. That's why the sense restraint becomes self-evident.
Because it reveals feelings.
Yeah. Well, it reveals the feelings that basically just mirrors then what your attitude is there. You realize that, when pleasant feeling is there, my attitude is full acceptance, full welcoming, full delight. But it's the exercising of any attitude towards any feeling. That's why craving is there. So removing, that's what I mean, you realize, many people, until they realize, will be blaming the feeling, blaming that which caused the feeling, blaming the world, blaming others, blaming themselves. The point is, you're liable to feeling whether you want to be or not. So you recognize, I don't have a say in that, and I should stop trying to change that. And that reveals then that what you can change is then your own overly welcoming feeling or overly resisting, based on whether they're agreeable or disagreeable, or being careless about them if they're neutral.
Because suffering has access to you if you do that.
Yeah, that is what suffering is. Yeah, that access is the suffering. And that's completely on you, not on the feeling. Craving is not in the feeling, inasmuch upadana is not in the aggregates. You look at the aggregates, you're not going to see upadana, you're only going to see aggregates. But it's that desire and lust, desire, I want this, desire, I don't want this. That's why craving is there in regard to it. Like a parasite, as Nyanamoli Thero would describe it. That's why this question, as we've done before, you can also ask yourself, again, not for the sake of answer, but for the sake of establishing an enduring perspective. What am I feeling right now, fundamentally? Overall, at the most peripheral corners of my experience, am I okay or am I not okay? Because that's where the feeling is. Or that's where it stretches from. So I'm okay. So let that endure. I'm fine. If you allow it to endure, then you see that phenomenon enduring for what it is. And when it changes, you see that too. Not like now it has changed. And you're just like, oh, now I'm not okay. So now there is another sort of vessel of your mood that's holding you up. Now different. Oh, so before it was okay, now it's not okay. Did I have a say in between? No, I didn't even see how it changed. It just came. Oh, so that means that whatever has come, it will have to go for the same reason that it came on its own. Yeah, that's true. That's already a form of like a liberating insight. But then you also realize that nothing is worth desiring towards. Nothing is worth adhering to because it came on its own, it will have to go on its own. But it needs to be seen on that most general contextual level, universal level. Not on the level of an answer and the theory right in front of you. Yeah, everything is constantly changing and so on. So if your present feeling now is I'm okay, that's fine. Is this present okay feeling, as in agreeable feeling, is this liable to suffering? As in, is it liable to change into unpleasant feeling and I will suffer on account of it? You will know that. And that's really, it's that suffering is on that level of the liability, not necessarily on the presently enduring feeling. That's why you have suffering in the pleasure as well, by not having enough of the pleasure you crave. That's why you have suffering in the displeasure, because you don't want any of the displeasure, yet there is still some. But if you stop exercising that attitude towards wanting more or not wanting any of it, and seeing it for what it is, enduring on its own, you stop resisting it, you stop indulging it, which means you will stop providing the basis for craving towards the feeling. And that's how you free yourself from suffering. And now you ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? Still okay, still the same feeling, enduring, 10 minutes now. And when it changes, you can carry on. And when I'm not okay, will I be bothered by it? Yes, no, okay. I'm not sure. Well, should I be sure? Surely I should strive for not being bothered by any feeling. So by questioning rightly, inducing perspective rightly, you get to induce more perspectives in the same sense, as in, okay, so this is what matters to me then. You get to clarify what needs to be done as well. And then you also get to recognize important as important, essential as essential, as you read that Dhammapada verse. Because you realize, okay, so if I never lose the sight of presently enduring feeling that's independent of me, can I then have any careless attitude towards it? No. Oh, so that's the gatekeeper that the Buddha was talking about. I don't need to be, I'm feeling okay, that's not a gatekeeper. That's you fabricating the answer you think it is. Because the feeling is already, you are already feeling okay. Or not okay, whatever. Feeling is already there independent of you. Presently enduring in your experience. If you stay mindful on that peripheral level without making it into actual answer, but without losing sight of it, you can't exercise attitude towards like wanting it, not wanting it. Because you realize this is completely, I'm invisible to my own feelings. They don't care about me. I don't exist for them. So me trying to change them, and it's just pointless. Just me tying my own self in a knot, and yet feeling still remains unaffected for as long as he wants to remain. That's why Arahant would remain contemplating five arising and falling, like enduring of the five aggregates on their own terms. Nothing for him to do. So you realize, oh, that's the task I should develop. Not lose the sight of this general context of the presently enduring feeling. And see, it will become mechanical if you forget how you're actually feeling. But if you don't forget, or if you remind yourself, you're like, oh, I'm feeling like this. Wait a minute, am I? What is the presently enduring feeling? What am I feeling? Plus, minus, okay, not okay, neutral, what is it? And then discern that basis, everything else, the context is back fully. You don't need to go through the motions of the answers that popped before, or read the suttas to reinduce that. No, it's right there. It was always right there. And then you have a gatekeeper. And so, should I be walking slowly and try not to lapse for a single second? No, that's pointless. That's like misdirected. All I need to do is not forget that presently enduring feeling is out of my control. And I will refrain from carelessly indulging it, and I will refrain from carelessly trying to get rid of it. And now I can talk to you because that doesn't affect my attitude towards this feeling, doesn't induce the attitude towards this feeling. But if you say, hey, let's go and, do these things, or something unwholesome, or let's go and in a big crowd of people, and it's like, well, I might not necessarily do anything bad in that situation, but that situation is certainly very incompatible with me maintaining the perspective on the presently enduring feeling that's right here. It's too distracting. So I say no to that. Oh, let's go to a Buddhist conference. Because, Buddhism, it's a good thing. Yeah, but that's 3,000 people there. Men, women, noise, smells, crowd. What's the purpose of that? What will I learn? Will I learn anything I don't know? No. So where is that? Rooted in justified excitement, justified distraction. Because, it's a good cause. Yeah, but it's a good cause universal, as in, conceptually, for people. It's a good cause on paper. But for me, it's a cause for distraction. So I don't do it. Because if I distract, and that's why you are responsible for your actions, that you're responsible for the basis of suffering in your own experience. Because you can't accidentally give rise to greed, aversion, delusion. It's always a choice. That's why you can also uproot it. You choose to be careless. You choose to do actions that will then result in losing the perspective and then do things out of lust or anger. Oh, yeah. You were fully aware of that leap that you made into the environment of lust or anger or distraction. You just lied to yourself at the time. But again, you can't truly lie to yourself, because in order to lie, you need to cover up the truth, which means you already know what the truth is, but you choose to focus on the lie. No, it's for the good cause. It's for the greater cause. There is no greater cause than personal suffering and freedom from it, for everyone. So that's what I mean. Through questioning, you get to discern the perspective, that then you realize, oh, this is that task that I need to do. I've been overdoing it, underdoing it. I didn't know what I was doing, but if I protect this mind on the level of this peripheral, presently enduring feeling independent of me, I don't need to do anything else. And whatever I do that doesn't contradict this, I'm fine. That's why you get in the sutta sometimes instruction on the level, whatever you know it's unwholesome, unskillful, incompatible, abandon it. Whatever you know that it's wholesome, skillful and compatible, cultivate it. Cultivate it, as in let it remain in the being. Don't negate it. Don't go the opposite way. And that's exactly how you will end up discerning essential as essential, non-essential, which is samaditi, which is the right view. Sotapanna knows skillful is skillful, unskillful is unskillful. He knows essential is essential, non-essential is non-essential. Because he sees direct connection to that basis that used to provide the suffering. Oh, this was fueling the basis, this is removing the basis. Hence, practicing for dispassion, removal of desire and lust, removal of any basis of unwholesome. But again, one thing is to have these on paper, is the information which is necessary, something to begin with. But another thing is to recognize that you must be the one understanding it on the basis of your present experience, not on a basis on an emotionally pleasing answer. So you can look at your whole day, in a way, day ahead of you. You can look from having established that more general perspective. All the particular actions that you're going to do throughout the day, you can keep this perspective at the back of your mind, which means you will not be able to be too careless about your acts, because the perspective you maintain still maintains a degree of context towards your particular actions, even if you don't actively think about it all the time. So if my context is freedom from suffering, I want to be free from suffering, means my context is also, by the extension, renunciation. So my context is saying no to gratuitous desire. And again, you don't need to go like now, I'm going to my kuti and I'm walking and I must say no to desire. No, my context is renunciation. Don't get distracted by overly defining it, but certainly don't forget about it or mystify it. So if your mind is established upon the theme of renunciation, anything that's non-renunciation on the particular level will not take your mind away from it. That's what Buddha meant by establishing the mind upon that greater context. Like you establish your mind upon the perceptions of the forest, so when you're in the village, no sights and sounds melted from the village will take your mind away, because you established it. You made the effort to establish the context. So, because what are the perceptions of the forest? It's perception of solitude, perception of like absence of people, a perception of non-sensuality. There's no sensuality in the forest, no sense objects. Perception of hardship, and those are the things that you cultivate and you start to value and you want to maintain at the back of your mind. You maintain that at the back of your mind, you don't need to worry about what comes in front, because that's the gatekeeper, that's the entry point. And if that's kept sort of under a watchful eye rightly, not like making it into sort of a meditation object, just keep it as a context. That's it. You can go throughout your day without having to worry about particular things. And if you lapse, you can re-establish the context, because it's always there. That's the point. The universals of renunciation, freedom from suffering, it's on the basis of any present experience, and there's always present experience for as long as you're alive. These things I'm saying now, it doesn't make sense to somebody. You can make that into a theme. Oh, so I have this pressure to understand what I just listened to. Why? Oh, because I want to be free from suffering. So what I just listened to was talking about freedom from suffering, and I want to be free from suffering. So why don't I try and understand it where my suffering is right now, not where my mind takes me in terms of, oh, this is what it's meant and this is what it's meant. No. So I want to understand this because I want to be free from suffering right here and now. So where is this suffering right here and now that needs to be understood? And then we go back to what we spoke before. How am I feeling right now then? So you're questioning, your contemplation, you don't want to do it in that like a third person sense, when you're just thinking about it on designation on top of designation on top of designation, failing to see what each of those designations actually designates in the present moment. That's how you develop concrete thinking, not abstract thinking. That's why when you speak like this, for people who have no concept of thinking concretely, they would just think this is just all theory. And you make things concrete by having a jhana experience. Well, what they think jhana is. But jhana is the right thinking. Thinking and pondering that's impenetrable to desire and lust, that has mounted the entire sensual domain as the Buddha described it. That's the jhana, unshakable thinking. Concrete thinking results in jhana. That's what jhana is. Not abstract. But most people, thinking is abstract for them. As in, it's divorced from the present concrete situation. So you want to rediscern it on the right terms and see it and think concretely. And that's what I mean. Don't jump into the answer that's going to be on the level of abstract, but discern it on the level of presently arisen situation that's concrete. That's fact. oh, I am okay overall. So you are clearly thinking it. All these are designations, but they pertain to the presently enduring phenomena. But if you go, oh yes, I am okay, but wait a minute, am I okay? Means you thinking you're okay and building everything else on top of it took you away from presently because you started doubting it. Because you can't doubt the concrete phenomena. Oh, is this like this? Is this this? What's my present experience as a whole? Oh, it's a present experience of doubt. And that's beyond doubt. So when concrete thinking becomes your norm, you pretty much can surmount any hindrance that comes your way. Because whatever hindrance is, it's a hindrance in regard to like that which pressures you with or takes you towards or confuses you about. But it cannot be a hindrance in regard to its own presence. That's why the mindfulness practice rightly, he knows his mind as mind affected by lust or mind free from lust. Yeah, lust is present, but it's not like by thinking it concretely, you are not affected by that lust. Losing the sight of that concrete. That's why there is a degree of like a temporary liberation, even to people who are utterly confused in their views and just keep saying, just be present, be here now. It brings you back into that concreteness, and that's why it does have a release. Nobody denies that. But you want to understand it. Not just like go back now, be present now. Because there is no understanding, which means none of the habits that take you away from that concrete moment are being understood. Having not being understood, you're not free from those. Which means you're just sort of resetting the problem. So yeah, come back to present moment, only to realize that you can't be outside of a present moment even if you want to. Only to realize that the utmost of your abstract thinking is concrete in itself, as a presently arisen experience. And then all the things that you thought were abstract before, or pure magic, you realize, well, they were only magic because I was the one divorcing them from reality, but they, in themselves, they are real as such. Then you can have mind-made bodies and fly and glide the suns and whatever else you want to do, because it's not abstract anymore. So abstraction, it's more an attitude rather than the content of your thought. That's somebody who doesn't understand what you're talking about, but he hears your words, your designations, but he doesn't see what they designate in his experience. Yeah, that's abstraction for them. But not because of what you said, but because of they don't have the basis to discern this. They haven't discerned the basis for these things. So that's why, how am I feeling right now? By giving a habitual answer takes you usually in the level of that abstraction. But by looking how you're feeling right now and then answering it, well, that's concrete thinking now. The thought has arisen on account of a concrete basis of a presently enduring feeling. And that's where you want to stay. That's that context I talk about. And the context will cease to be the context when he has drifted into abstraction and lost any anchoring to the basis of concrete situation. Hence mindfulness, anchoring, referencing, whatever. That's the whole point. The principle of it is what mindfulness is.